Welcome back, everyone. My name is Caroline, and today I hope you're ready for a pop quiz. That's right, today's lesson is all about testing your knowledge on what we've learned about the United States and Canada. Now, before you break out in hives or scream out loud, keep in mind that this pop quiz isn't even for a grade. In fact, you don't have to write anything down. Peace out, guys, because today's pop quiz will simply be an oral review of the United States and Canada, and along the way provide you with opportunities to test your knowledge. Are you ready? Okay, let's begin today's review with shared physical characteristics of the two nations. I'm sure you know that both the U.S. and Canada are bordered on the east by the Atlantic Ocean and out west by the Pacific. Canada and the U.S. share two major mountain ranges as well. Can you remember which mountain chain is located in the west? Of course, it's the Rocky Mountains, which extend more than 3,000 miles from British Columbia down through New Mexico. And in the east, the Appalachians run from the U.S. south up into Canada. In between those two mountain ranges are the Great Plains, which fill the vast interior of each nation with farmland for crops such as wheat and corn. Can you remember the really important feature that dominates the topography of Canada? If you said the Canadian Shield, nice job! For a bonus point, do you remember its other name? Many of you got it, the Laurentian Plateau. The Canadian Shield is mostly granite with a thin layer of soil. It's huge and stretches across Canada from the Arctic Ocean to the Great Lakes and even all the way to Greenland. Another feature you should remember are drainage basins, rivers that empty water from the continents to the ocean. Can you recall the largest drainage basin in North America? It's the fourth largest in the world. I heard the answer. Yeah, it's the Mississippi River, and part or all of 31 states plus 2 Canadian provinces drain into the Mississippi River, which then runs to the Gulf of Mexico south of New Orleans. Let's move to the climates of the two countries. While the U.S. is filled with diverse climates, Canada is dominated by two. You remember which two? I think most of you know them, tundra and subarctic. The tundra is mostly treeless and covered with permafrost, while the subarctic region spans almost 2 million square miles and is full of coniferous forests. The U.S., as you know, features more diverse climates. While this map shows the vast array of climates found in our 50 states, the majority of the land can be placed into 4 categories. In 2 shades of blue, stretching from the Dakotas eastward to the northeast region, is the humid continental climate zone. Dominating the south region in bright green is the humid subtropical climate. Much of the west is shown in shades of orange. That's the semi-arid climate region. And along the Pacific coast in shades of gold, you see the Mediterranean climate zone. Another cool feature about this map is that you can see how climate can reflect the physical characteristics of the land. Look at the deserts in red in states such as Arizona, Nevada, and Texas. Check out the purple mountains majesty of the Rockies out west in the Mediterranean continental climate. I'm sure you see the massive subarctic region in Alaska. And what's that down in Florida? That's right, the Everglades, shown on this map as a savanna climate region. Let's move now from the land and climate to the people who inhabit these two nations, shall we? While both Canada and the U.S. are noted for being lands of diverse people and cultures, there is one huge difference between the two nations in that regard. Think about it. That's right, the population. Do you remember how many people are in the U.S.? If you said 328 million, then give yourself a high five. Wait, that won't work. Okay, so how many people live in Canada? Yep, 38 million, which is just about 1/8 of the U.S. total. Despite the tremendous difference in population, the two nations have a huge number of similarities. Both have a high ratio of minorities, almost 40% in the U.S., more than 22% in Canada, and both countries have about 78% of its population that speaks English as a primary language. Both nations are also predominantly Christian in faith, about 67% in Canada and about 76% in the U.S. Do you remember which nation has a higher life expectancy? That's right, Canada, by about 3 years for both males and females. I'm still trying to figure out why that's true. The governments of the two nations are similar as well, with three branches made up of a court system, a bicameral legislature, and a chief executive. But there's one really big difference between the two. Do you know what it is? Yes, Canada has a prime minister rather than a president, but I heard someone say it. Canada is a constitutional monarchy. The prime minister is like our president, but the monarch is technically the head of the state for the nation. The similarities in culture and government lie greatly in the history of the nations. Both were once populated by indigenous Native Americans who arrived in the Americas centuries ago from Asia using the Beringia land bridge. Both nations were explored by Europeans in the 1500s, and both were once part of England's worldwide colonial empire. Let's just say the two took different paths to independence. Both Canada and the U.S. are nations of immigrants, melting pots, if you will, dating back to the first wave of Europeans beginning in the 1500s. Even today, about 1 out of every 5 Canadians was born elsewhere compared to, do you remember? About 13% of Americans who were born in another country. Something else they have in common. A large majority of citizens in both countries live in urban areas. In the U.S., for example, 56 million alone live in the megalopolis that stretches from Norfolk, Virginia to Portland, Maine, and includes cities such as Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. New York City alone has 8 million residents, but can you recall how many folks live in the New York metropolitan area, the largest such area in the U.S. and Canada? If you said 20 million, then you nailed it. And New York City has a population density of more than 27,000 people per square mile. New York is the largest city in the Northeast region, but let's see if you can recall other basics about the 4 U.S. regions. I'll throw out a few questions, and you'll answer either Northeast, South, Midwest, or West. Got it? Let's go. This region includes states such as Ohio and Indiana, as well as South Dakota and Nebraska. Yes, the Midwest, America's heartland. This region has signature cities such as New Orleans, Nashville, Miami, and Houston. Right, the South. Which region has the Rockies and Sierra Nevada mountains and several states that border the Pacific Ocean? Easy one for you, the West. Name the region that has the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone National Park. The West again. This region includes Boston and Philadelphia and was the birthplace of industry in the U.S. The Northeast, of course. Yeah, I know, you got them all. Feeling smart, huh? Let's keep rocking. This region includes the Great Lakes and the Great Plains. Yup, the Midwest. Name the region that has Pennsylvania and New Jersey. The Northeast. Which region includes our nation's capital, Washington, D.C.? The South. Got a couple of you on that one. This region is by far the largest in terms of area. The West, that's right, helped greatly by Alaska. This region was a long-time home to the 3 big automakers and earned the nickname the Iron Belt. Midwest it is. Yes, and the Iron Belt was definitely a big part of Michigan and Ohio. Which region, as of 2020, had 37% of the U.S. population and continues to grow? The South. Name the region that includes Delaware, West Virginia, and Maryland. The South again. Try to sneak that one past you. Which region is the smallest in size and has only 9 states? Northeast for sure. Name the region that includes the technology hubs of Silicon Valley and Seattle as economic centers. Easy one, right? The West. Name the region that is home to the space industry with sites such as Kennedy Space Center and the Marshall Space Flight Center. The South. Do you know which region has Wall Street and Broadway and is considered the center for economics and entertainment in the U.S.? Of course, it's the Northeast. Which region was home to 5 of the 8 presidents elected from 1976 through 2020? Oh, you remembered. The South. Which region has long relied on farming and includes 8 of the top 9 states in total agricultural exports? Yes, the Midwest. Not bad. You actually did quite well. Before you start getting cocky, let's move to Canada. First of all, can you remember how many provinces are in Canada? Tricky one, huh? Canada has 10 provinces and 3 territories. Can you name all 3 territories? The 3 territories in Canada are Nunavut, Yukon, and the Northwest Territories. Okay. Can you name at least 2 distinguishing facts about the territories as a whole? All right, I heard some good answers, including some of these. The 3 territories, as of 2020, had less than 120,000 people total. That's less than 1% of the population. Roughly half of those people claim First American status as an Indigenous descendant. The territories comprise nearly half of Canada's nearly 4 million square miles of land. And that land is rich in resources such as fossil fuels and minerals such as gold, silver, copper, and zinc. How'd you do? We will move now to the Canadian provinces. Here's a map to look at as we go. Ready? Can you recall which one has 38% of Canada's population? Ontario! Ontario has well over a third of Canada's citizens, about 38%, and Ontario and Quebec combined have more than 60% of the nation's population. Which province speaks French as its official language? Quebec is right. Which provinces are included in the Prairie provinces? Yep, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Name the westernmost province located between the Pacific Ocean and the Rocky Mountains. Easy peasy, I know. BC. The Maritimes provinces are located on the Atlantic coast. Can you name at least 3? As you can see, the right answers are New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Little Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland and Labrador. Which Canadian city with a population of 2.8 million in 2020 is the nation's largest? You got it, Toronto. And notice again how all of the largest cities in Canada, as seen on this map, are located close to the U.S. border. Name the Canadian city nicknamed Hollywood North because of its prolific film productions. Vancouver it is. What is the waterway that connects Canada's Great Lakes area to the Atlantic Ocean? The correct answer is the St. Lawrence Seaway. Do you remember the capital of Canada? Yep, Ottawa, located in Ontario, close to Toronto. Which Canadian city hosted the World's Fair in 1967 and the Summer Olympics in 1976? Montreal, here in Quebec. You did pretty well on those too, it seems. As we start to wrap things up, let's reflect on the economies of both the U.S. and Canada. Again, consider the similarities between the two. Both Canada and the U.S. are economic powers globally. Both are members of the G7 consortium. Both nations are developed with high gross domestic products. Both maintain high standards of living and are among the world's leaders in average incomes for their workers. Both nations have advanced economically based on a shared common belief in individual rights, applying the principles of capitalism, and possession of vast lands full of natural resources. Both nations capitalize on agriculture, mining, and non-renewable fossil fuels to stimulate their economies, produce power, and feed their citizens. And both the U.S. and Canada face similar concerns of balancing their economic development from those resources with preserving and protecting the environment. The two are reliable trade partners. Do you remember the percentage of Canadian exports that are sent to the U.S.? About 75%, that's right. What about the percentage of American exports shipped to Canada? 20%. While that imbalance is perceived by some as a Canadian dependency on their American neighbors, this much is undeniable. Few nations on Earth share histories as intertwined as the United States and Canada. And just as their pasts are highly connected, so too likely is their future. The two are longtime trade partners, but also allies and neighbors. Canada and the U.S. share the world's longest international border at well over 5,000 miles. The fact that most of that border is unmanned and unfenced speaks volumes about the relationship between the two countries. As we conclude our look at the U.S. and Canada, we hope you're learning and enjoying our time together. Learning can and should be fun, but we're just getting started on our journey around the globe. Pack your bags, we have a lot of traveling to do. And until next time, keep exploring.
Hey!